Hi, ladies and gentlemen. I've been thinking I might start doing a recording called The Funniest Thing I've Seen in the Last Week or So. The funniest thing I've seen lately was a tweet from Donald Trump Jr. where he called Robert Francis Beto O'Rourke Beta. I mean, it just struck me as hilarious. I mean, brevity is the soul of wit. I don't know if Don Jr. was the originator of that or he got it from somewhere, but whoever came up with it had a flash of genius. Because that rename does at least two or three things. It mocks his self-given name, a name he gave himself to pander to Hispanics. And of course, it calls him a beta male, so that's no good. And also, it reminded me of the old beta machines. I remember in the late 70s or early 80s, video cassette machines became like widely available. And there was two types of machines, VCRs and betas. And they were totally incompatible. Like the VCR had two reels or two wheels, and the beta just had one. Well, anyways, the producers of home video cassette movies for a year or so produced both types of cassettes that would, you could, play in the VCR or play in a beta. But after a year or so, they just went strictly to VCR. So VCRs became a monopoly product in a way. And so the betas became obsolete. I remember a good friend of mine bought a beta machine back then. After about 6 months, he was like, man, this sucks. So anyways, that reminded me that I kept a copy of this Vanity Fair cover that he was on a few months ago that you see on your screen. And I remembered it said something like, man, I was born to be in it. That just stuck in my mind for some reason. By the way, I didn't even go groveling back to apologize over that. I think he did a lot of that. I know he apologized over his white privilege, of course. He tried to nullify his white privilege by applying to himself a Hispanic name, but deep down he knew you can't just put a band-aid on your white privilege. Then he apologized for sending out a video of himself getting a haircut or something. I don't know. I just hear random things about this guy. I have no interest in this guy whatsoever, except as a curiosity of our times. He's like a court jester of our times. Remember how he would randomly show up at a restaurant and jump on the table and start spouting his platitudes and bromides? Bromides. Actually, I'm not sure. I better look that up and see if I'm using this right. Hold on a second. Let me check on this. A trite and unoriginal idea or remark. Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Typically intended to soothe or placate. Well, yeah. I didn't know how right I was using that word. That's perfect. For beta, I mean. I'll tell you what, though. If I was at that restaurant, if I went out to dinner at that restaurant and that happened, I'd be pissed. I'd demand my money back. I kid you not. I mean, so, I don't know, that was one of his little ploys for some reason. He thought that would be a good idea. Yeah, I don't think it worked for him well. But anyways, he's such a lightweight and blatant fraud that I enjoy when something about him comes up. It gives you a little break from the living nightmare of modern American life for a little frivolity, when Beta shows up in the news. And let me just say, I don't normally talk about people this way. I mean, I have empathy and sympathy for everybody's struggles. God knows I have my own. But this guy wants to be the leader of the free world. Why? What has he done? Where does he come from? I know he ran against the Cruiser in 2018. By the way, I called Ted Cruz the Cruiser. Before he grew his beard, I used to imagine him with a greased back hair and like a white t-shirt and a leather jacket like the Fonz of the Senate. And now he's like the Wolfman of the Senate with his beard. So anyways, Beta, darn it, Beta ran against the Cruiser for Texas Senate in 2018. And he lost despite getting tons of money from Hollywood bigwigs, right? Isn't that what was going on with Beta's campaign there in Texas in 2018? He got a ton of money from Hollywood. Like, if I remember correctly, he raised more money than anybody at that time. So he had the media, the false scribes, and look closely at that Vanity Fair cover there, ladies and gentlemen. That photograph was taken by Annie Leibovitz. You see her credited there on the on that picture. So, talk about the elite media. She's been the photographer of the stars since the 60s and early 70s. So he had the media elite shilling for him, like the little false scribes that they are, the little contractors for the DNC. They love to present themselves in the cloak of the noble watchman. They're capital J journalists, the direct descendants of Edward R. Murrow, he of the unflinching eye, holding them accountable, speaking the truth to power. Ugh, don't you just want to vomit when you hear somebody use that phrase, speaking the truth to power, in the sanctimonious tones of society's self-appointed, self-righteous censors and demagogues? These days, whenever you hear somebody described as, or even worse, describing themselves as, speaking truth to power, it's generally a safe bet that that person's full of crap. So he had the media, Beta had the media. He had Hollywood money and star power on his side. He had the propaganda machine on his side. And I think he had the fake polls on his side. Weren't all the polls showing it that he was going to win? He was going to unseat the Cruiser. Well, how did that turn out? So anyways, for some reason though, Beta, he had a serious hype machine behind him. How did he get so hyped up? What warranted so much coverage of him from this, elite media, from Hollywood elites? Why did they bet on Beta? I mean, at this point, isn't he basically polling at 0%? Well, pretty soon Beta will drop out of the race. He'll give some speech and leave us with a few bizarre tidbits, and then we'll fade into oblivion, never to be heard from again. But until then, let's see if we can skateboard along with Beta for a few more days. That reminds me, somebody tweeted out a meme today of the Democrat race as a car race. And it shows Biden in the lead, but he's only going 5 miles per hour, and it's a one lane race. So all the young candidates are yelling at him like, "You're blocking traffic, Grandpa." And then you see Betta back there on his skateboard, so I retweeted it and added. And I personally think this is genius. So I added, "I see Betta is still in it!" Exclamation point. On his skateboard, no less. Exclamation point. Man, Betta was just born to be in it! Exclamation point. Sorry, sometimes I get a real kick out of myself. So anyways, this morning, I was listening to Sebastian Gorka, and he was talking about the Democrat debates, and he was talking about Betta, and he said that for the most recent debate, the one just a few days ago or whenever, you know how the candidates will give special invitations to their debates to one of their supporters, say like a heroic war veteran or police officer or teacher, something like that. Well, for this debate, Betta invited 4 high school kids who played high school football in Michigan, who followed the example of the reprehensible, ignorant Colin Kaepernick and knelt down like groveling fools at the national anthem before their games. So this gained some notoriety, and so Betta invited them because, as I recall, when that issue was hot, Betta wrote some article about it that created a stir. I didn't read it. I mean, I wouldn't waste my precious eyesight that God gave me on anything that Betta wrote. But I feel like it was probably some sophomoric commentary on the issue that contained just the right mixture of cliches and platitudes. But the media told the mass of gullible dummies that, hey, there's a new sheriff in town, a Texas gunslinger, a young gun. He just wrote an article so profound that you can't really understand it. All you can do is appreciate its brilliance from afar. But in reality, Betta is a poser. In fact, when I saved this pic a few months ago, I gave it the file name Poser. And as many of you folks realize, things are getting super crazy out there. This bleep is about to get real. And we can't afford to suffer our fools, our court jesters, or our posers any longer. Thank you for listening, ladies and gentlemen. Please subscribe to this channel. And I am going to be making some other recordings. I'm going to do something about wild cards and the whole Russiagate, Spygate, Collusiongate, FISAgate, that whole thing. So I'm going to do a recording about one of the wild cards in that whole case. And I'm also going to be changing the name of this channel soon, and hopefully I will get that done right and everything will just flow through. But in the meantime, please subscribe to this channel and keep looking for more recordings. Thank you, folks. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate it.